All right, now that you have completed your second check for understanding question about how to do a KWL, we're going to move into the next part of the direct instruction lesson sequence. So we've already figured out our lesson objectives. We have reviewed prerequisites with our students, and now it's time to present new material. So as you guys know, this is where the main body of the lesson lies, the main chunk. So you want to present and instruct explicitly new information or skills. While doing so, you can give examples of the new information and how it can be applied, as well as demonstrate the new information and its concepts. So the structure of the lesson should be well organized and be logical. We know that information that has a clear, well-organized structure is better retained than is less clearly presented information. There are several ways that you as an instructor can help your students organize information so that it's better able to be retained in their brain. This is very small, so you can't really see the details of it, but what it is a outline form. So thinking about note-taking, you can, as an instructor, provide an outline of the lesson for your students to help them follow along and be able to make the information that you're presenting to them meaningful and kind of classify it. Alternately, you as the instructor can have your students make their own outline of the material. You could give them advanced organizers or otherwise give them some kind of hierarchical organization of the information so that they're able to make sense of it and make those connections as to what is important, why it's important, and what does it link to. So within presentation of a lecture, you should clearly indicate what the most important elements of the lesson are. You can say this verbally, you can make this known visually or auditorily. You could just say, guys, this is a really important part of the lesson, so make sure you're listening up. Or you could have maybe a key point sign on your PowerPoint slides so students visually know that this is a really important part, so they're going to want to pay particular attention to this part of the lesson. Additionally, when presenting new material, if something's really important, you want to repeat that important point and try to connect it back to the lesson whenever appropriate. You want your lesson to be clear. The language that you use should be appropriate, so direct, simple, consistent. And without your lesson, you want to maintain the same sort of language to ensure that the key points that you're really striving to drive home remain clear. And additionally, explanations are really important. So not only are you stating the information, but you're explaining why that information is, how that information can be used. And research has found that effective teachers will use a variety of different modes for giving explanations. We'll use cooperative learning opportunities, use discussion. We'll use explanatory words when describing information. So that means that you could say something like, in order to best facilitate your students' retention of information, you're going to explain why that information is important to them. So that's an example of using explanatory words to describe a piece of information to your students. And additionally, there is this pattern when presenting new concept that research supports being used. So this is the rule, example, rule pattern. So when you give a statement about a fact or why something is the way it is, you can then follow it up by an example, which will help make that rule or fact more meaningful to students because they are given a different opportunity to view that same rule or example in a new light to help make those connections in their brain. So when presenting material, you can use worked examples. So particularly for math, you can show steps how to solve a specific problem and then go through those steps in front of the class so that they know how to use those steps to find the solution. And additionally, demonstrations, models, and illustrations are really great because, again, it's a variety of modes of different explanations for why something is the way it is. That will really help build those meaningful connections in your students' brains. When presenting new material, you want to maintain your students' attention. So again, thinking back to the information processing model, we know that if somebody's not attending to something or paying attention to something, it's less likely that that information is going to get into their brain to be learned. So different tricks for maintaining attention, you could use humor, mix it up, have variety in your lessons, introduce different activities into your lessons. But it's kind of a fine line because you want to vary your modes of presentation and you want to keep your students' attention, but you don't do too much. You don't overwhelm your students. So just know your audience, know your students, and what works best for them. This goes for the amount of content coverage and pacing of your lessons as well. You want to know your students and know what's too slow for them, what's too fast for them, and what's just right. So research implies that most teachers could actually increase their pace of instruction. But an important caveat is that the pace of instruction can be increased only if the degree of understanding in students is not sacrificed as a result. Now it is time for your third Check for Understanding video. So the video is going to end after I'm done talking about this slide. And this is where the second part of this week's lecture is going to end. So next, you're going to watch a video entitled How to Do a Jigsaw. When you're done watching the How to Do a Jigsaw video, open up your Word document for your third Check for Understanding question. Your Check for Understanding question is to answer the following about the jigsaw instructional technique. A, briefly describe how an instructor can utilize the jigsaw technique. B, do you think this is an effective technique? Why or why not? And C, how can you use this technique in your future or current career? So watch the How to Do a Jigsaw video, answer those questions, and then pull up part 3 of this week's recorded lecture and we'll continue on.